welcome to this episode of the Red Cat podcast. Hannah Schevers, a student of fashion design at Fanshawe College, who created Tru Faces, a community for people with disabilities. Hi, Hannah. First question, before I would like to know what I should say. People with special needs, people with disabilities, what do you think is the better word to
I
mention the
think
community?
we definitely always emphasize that disability is not a bad word. I definitely don't hear special needs used as often. I definitely would not go for that. There is an entire conversation about saying people with disabilities versus a disabled person. That kind of wording, I'm pretty flexible with either, but my go-to would always be a person with a disability, which is kind of putting me before my disability and kind of being able to see me as an individual.
Well, I really appreciate this that you clarify this because sometimes it's like I don't know if I can, I can hurt someone to use this word because for me it's the same. A disability it doesn't mean that you cannot do it. You have other kind of capacities, so different ways, but at the end you can do it. So Hannah, my first question is: could you talk about a little bit about yourself? To know about the Goldenhar Syndrome.
Yep.
I say it. So
Yeah.
explain, please.
Yeah, so I was born with a genetic condition called Goldenhar Syndrome, which means that I was born without my right eye and no right hearing. My face is also asymmetrical, so I have a cleft lip, and that's it, yeah.
What inspired you to pursue a career in fashion design? In your case.
Well, as someone with a facial difference, fashion has always kind of empowered me in a way. When I can't change my appearance, I could always kind of change my outfits into something that I felt very comfortable with. And so at a young age, I started kind of drawing outfits. And then going into high school, I learned how to sew. And it just kind of snowballed from there. I just really fell in love with it and the creativity behind it.
And how was this first year in the program?
It was my second year.
Second year, sorry,
Yeah.
second year.
Second year. It was crazy. I think to say it was busy is an understatement. But I always enjoy learning the new things, and as stressful as it can be, I truly enjoy every aspect of it.
So you are going to participate in Unbound next year?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
So that's one of the questions that I have related to clothes because I have just mentioned before the interview. I would like to know when you create your designs, I don't know if you think of your community, how they can dress, if they have to use a wheelchair or if they need another person to get dressed. So
Yeah, it's definitely always on my mind. I think that I've only recently started learning about adaptive fashion, and I kind of continue to learn about it and learn about all the different ways. I think that there are some kind of very simple ways to make fashion more accessible, such as having tags with QR codes so that people with vision loss or blindness can use their phone to scan the QR code and get a visual description of the garment, know the price, and have all that information and be able to use their phone to make that more accessible. That has always been kind of something that I think is so easy and such an easy way to make fashion more accessible for people with vision loss. So that's something that I definitely want to incorporate into all of my designs. I think that's something very basic, but again, I'm still learning about it, so I'm always looking for new ways to make fashion more accessible.
but the name is adapted fashion, right?
Yeah.
And did you find more fashion designers with, with clothes who can be accessible for people with special needs, or did you see that here in Canada or across the world there are not enough fashion designs for the community?
I don't think it's talked about enough because I have been in the fashion industry and watching fashion news for a while, but I've only learned about adaptive fashion in the last few years. So I think that it's still something, I don't want to say it's kind of new, but I think that it's kind of small, and I don't think it gets the recognition that it deserves.
Yeah, because it's true that we can see right now people in magazines, in the fashion week, with different disabilities are at the same different shapes of body, but still in the clothes it's not trendy topic.
Yeah, and I think it's two different problems. One being the lack of representation in the fashion industry, seeing people with visible and invisible disabilities. And then it's a separate issue of actually making the fashion and the garments more accessible and inclusive so that people with disabilities can wear them.
It's interesting because you consider that, for example, for the magazines, there is like a stereotype of a person with disabilities, and that's it. They don't represent the, the variety that you can find or other person in the society.
Yeah, and I think that the lack of representation of everybody in the fashion industry, I think that the fashion industry can set unrealistic expectations. So I think that many people with or without disabilities can kind of relate to that and seeing that lack of representation. And so I think that that is becoming more of a topic of discussion, that consumers want to see, you know, plus size bodies and people of different race represented in fashion. And so I think that disability is kind of following along on that train, even though it may be a little farther down. So,
oh, that's super interesting. So, I don't know if that's why you created Tru Face, to show that people with a special need, with disabilities, can be around the world and they can do their life by themselves. I don't know what was the purpose of your community that you created with your sister too.
yeah. It was honestly completely separate from fashion. Both fashion and disability were both always important to me growing up, and I've kind of only started kind of intertwining them together as I begin my career. But Tru Faces was created by me and my sister in November of 2018, and we had started going to these camps and programs for people with different disabilities. Specifically, we went to W. Ross McDonald School for the Blind in Brantford, and we started attending short-term programs over the weekend there. And that was kind of our first opportunity to meet people, specifically our age, with similar disabilities, and we just kind of really felt empowered by being welcomed into that community. But we grew up in a small town where there wasn't many people with disabilities, so there wasn't many kids our age with disabilities that we could kind of connect to. So our purpose behind Tru Faces was to kind of create an online platform where people could connect from far away and not necessarily having to drive hours to meet people with similar disabilities.
You have just said that a small community. You are talking about London or close to London, or?
We actually grew up in Kawartha Lakes, Ontario, which is about a 4-hour drive from here, and it's a small rural village. You had to kind of drive 20 minutes just to get into town. I only came to London about 2 years ago when I came to Fanshawe.
How was your life? Because I understand that, for example, this condition is not common. So I don't know, how was your life before coming here in London? I mean, your sister, I know she has another kind of disability, but in your case, how was, growing up in a in a small town, small community without a lot of representation?
Yeah, it was definitely isolating, and I think that me and my sister were really lucky to have each other, although our conditions are completely separate. We always like to joke that we won the genetic lottery because both of our conditions were genetic, but they're completely different. Yeah, so it's quite a rare case, but we were lucky to have each other, and I was lucky to have my big sister to kind of lean on when I was going through those struggles, and she was able to kind of talk to me about what she was struggling with her disability. But our support group, we were lucky. We had a great support group. We had each other and we had our parents, which was great, but it didn't really extend past that. So we didn't have any kind of friends that could relate to our experiences.
Mm-hmm. And how many members right now Tru Face has?
Well, I think that depends on kind of how you define members. We have about
or participants, perhaps, or number of people that are now in your community.
Our Instagram page is definitely our largest platform because that's kind of where we started and where we're most active on. So we have about 1,500 followers.
Wow.
Which is quite impressive. And then we have, I think, about 15 or so ambassadors that help us create the content for our page.
What is the purpose of the ambassador? I mean, any kind of person with disabilities can be ambassador in your community, or how it works?
So we welcome everyone with or without disabilities. We want to be really inclusive. The candidates really just have to be passionate for disability and want to advocate for it. But our ambassadors work very hard. They help us create our content to keep our page active. But I'm most grateful for our ambassadors because they provide different perspectives. Because me and Emilee, we only have so much experience to kind of talk about. So I really like that our ambassadors can kind of bring new experiences and perspectives and also educate us about disability awareness. So their kind of job is to help us create content, help us write blog posts. They also help us host and plan for community meetings that we host.
I want to know if people come to your community. I mean, I don't know if you found parents who go to your community and ask, my child need help, how you can support that kind of members, because I understand when you are old, I mean, you are 18, 19, it's easy perhaps to connect with you, but I don't know if you had that situation in which parents ask you how we can help our child.
Yeah, we have gotten that a few times, and it's kind of amazing, our ambassador program. We have people from all age. We have like 15, 16-year-olds, and then we also have kind of like people that are like 50 plus, which is really incredible because, again, different perspectives, which we're allowed to kind of connect people. So when we're not able to kind of provide advice and experiences, we can be like, hey, connect with this person who might have a better idea. For example, we had one ambassador who was, I think, about 40 years old, and she had her own struggles with having a child.
Wow.
So, you know, me and my sister, we don't have children, so we can't relate to those experiences. But if we had someone who was kind of looking for someone to relate to, then we could maybe kind of refer them to that ambassador.
What kind of activities do you organize for all the community?
Yeah, so we have had projects. We had our Pen Pal project where we kind of connected people. We had a video campaign called I Am Not My Disability, which was very successful, and we're hoping to do something like that again. We use our Instagram platform to kind of just educate about disability awareness, kind of posting whatever information we can, whatever resources we can. Our ambassador program is obviously very big. We always try to encourage people to apply for that too.
So you have website, Instagram, and YouTube channel?
Yes. I don't like to talk about our YouTube channel.
Why?
It is there. It does exist, but you know, we were young when we started Tru Faces. It was already 5 years ago. And so we started our Instagram, and then like a month later, we decided to start our YouTube.
But I read, in an article that, for example, thanks to YouTube, you could share and you could promote your own community. So.
Yeah. I mean, like, there's definitely some good stuff on there if you can find it. There's a few cringy videos. So, yeah, but I think we kind of... It kind of died out a little bit just because me and Emilee were both kind of pursuing our careers and going on with our lives, so we didn't really have time, and we were also never together. You know, I moved to London, she moved to Hamilton, and so we were never together to film, and so it's there.
It's another work, you know. I understand. Like as a journalist, I understand why the social media it's difficult, more than people think. And obviously, I think that I would like to know what is the next step for Tru Face. I don't know if you have a project for the next year. Or
yeah, we do get asked that a lot, like what's our kind of 5-year vision and stuff. We did have a very insightful meeting at the beginning of this year, kind of talking about our plans for the year and what we wanted to do. Something that we recently did was we kind of restructured our ambassador program entirely. We decided to accept applications all year round. We kind of decided to change the structure of our meetings. So that was like a big change for us that we've done so far this year. In the works, a little sneak peek. I don't know how many people we've told about this, but we're hoping to do another video campaign because the first one was so successful. And we're also hoping to come up with some limited edition apparel.
Emilee is not here, but for example, I don't know if as a co-founders of the community, I don't know if you have different roles inside the Tru Face or...
Yes. I think that because she's my bigger sister, she's always had a bit more of an important role. She always seems to have a better idea of what she's doing, and so I have to give credit where credit's due. She's amazing. She does a lot of the hard work behind Tru Faces. We do always try to work together as a team. We make decisions as a team, and she always tries to take my opinion into account, which is always nice. But she's such a role model for me, and I'm always
Oh, that's beautiful.
yeah. She really is. She's amazing. I could never talk about how great she is, but she does a lot of the hard work behind Tru Faces, and I know that I could not do it without her.
Next time, Emilee, you are going to be here, eh?
Yeah.
Hannah is doing the hard work today.
Yeah, exactly.
Recently, you have been here with your sister in the event of invisible disabilities. I would like to know more about this concept because there are people who only consider people with disabilities if you can see it. If not, it doesn't exist. I don't know how was this event. If I don't know if a lot of students attended. It was, yeah, recently like May 6th or May 9th. Yeah. So tell me about this.
It was pretty successful. I really enjoyed kind of being able to talk to all the students and the staff. It was just kind of a great opportunity to connect with more people. So invisible disabilities is a very important topic because there are a lot of stereotypes around disabilities, and that's really what we try to kind of inform people about it and kind of make corrections and give them
Yeah.
more education. So invisible disabilities is, a very important topic because people with invisible disabilities face their own challenges, like trying to advocate for themselves, and a common issue that they have is trying to prove their disability to complete strangers, which is completely not fair. So I think that it's just so important to educate about invisible disabilities so that people can be more educated and kind of know how to interact with people with both visible and invisible disabilities.
So, for example, invisible disability could be a person who can. I don't know if you could give me an
Yeah.
example because sometimes I know about the invisible disabilities, but I don't know if I could recognize an invisible disability or.
Yeah, it can definitely be hard to recognize, and I think that's why people with invisible disabilities have to advocate more for their needs. But it's interesting because a disability can be both visible and invisible, such as blindness or deafness. They can seem invisible because you can't see it, right? But there are then, of course, certain cues such as a white cane or hearing aid that can make it visible. But if someone has enough vision that they don't need a white cane or they
Yeah.
don't need a sighted guide, then you would never know that they're dealing with vision loss.
Because I understood that with the whole Goldenhar Syndrome, sometimes you have difficulties to hear or
Yeah.
to listen. So for me, that's an invisible disability.
Yeah, and I'm in the unique position where I have both, and it's an interesting thing that I'm still learning about where, I have a facial difference, and so my disability seems apparent and it seems like obvious to people, but then I talk to people and they're like, I had no idea that your right eye was prosthetic. So that's an interesting situation. And then my hearing impairment is definitely an invisible disability because most of the time when I'm interacting with people, I don't have a hearing aid or anything. But if you're standing on my right side, then that becomes a real problem for me, and then I have to
Oh, so
advocate
for
for
example, you hear better on the left or on
it.
the
Yeah, so
right?
I have full hearing on my left, so that's great that you're on my left
Oh,
side right
that
now.
was good.
I had to make sure, but then no hearing on my right side, and with no vision on my right side either. It's a real problem if someone's on my right side because I can't see or hear them.
And during your classes, your programs, I don't know if you had adapted documents. So with all these, I don't want to say difficulties. I want to say challenges.
Yeah.
With these challenges, how you can follow your course. I don't know if you have adapted the program or.
Yeah, it's been a journey. I'm lucky in that I've had my disability my whole life, so it's been an ongoing journey, and I have some solutions in place for when I deal with challenges. One of the big things is my FM system that I have that I use in the classroom specifically. So the teacher will wear kind of a lanyard around their neck, and then I have a hearing aid that goes into my good ear.
Oh.
But this one's different compared to what I used in kind of elementary school, because in elementary school, it would be a speaker in the back of the room that would like project the teacher's voice to everyone, which really felt like a big call out, and it wasn't as effective. Whereas this new FM system that I discovered in high school, it allowed the teacher's voice to go like straight to my ear. So that was kind of nice, and it felt more subtle.
Little details that can make the difference for
Yeah.
you. Oh, so, and I don't know, here in Fanshawe College, we know that professors, students try to help people with disabilities, but I don't know if it is the same in other places, because I know that, for example, if if I don't make a mistake, in theory next year all the public buildings should be adaptive for people with special needs, so they can take the elevator. They don't. So I don't know. What do you think about this? I mean, Fanshawe College is doing the good things, but I don't know if other
Yeah.
places or other areas.
I mean, I have had very positive experiences at Fanshawe. The faculty are always accommodating, and dealing with accessibility services has been a very smooth process. And I hear the experiences from other ambassadors and people that I've come into contact with, and they have not had such positive experiences. So it's always good to recognize when an organization is taking those extra steps to be accessible and accommodating.
Mhm. Well, right now, my last question will be, how can people support Tru Faces mission and contribute to creating a more inclusive and accepting society for people with disabilities?
I think that the first step is always education. I think educating yourself and then being able to educate others is kind of the easiest thing to do, and it's the most important. And that's one of our pillars, is to educate about people. So you can be sure to follow our Instagram page. We're also on Facebook. You can follow our YouTube if you dare. Any interaction with our page is always helpful, boosting our stories and promoting them. You can also apply to our ambassador program if you're so inclined. And just kind of support us and educate yourself. I think that's the biggest thing.
Well, thank you so much, Hannah, and talking about the Tru Faces, your challenge. I really appreciate your experience and your testimony. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Hannah.
for having me.
And thank you for listening to another episode of The Red Couch. As you know, that you can catch up with every episode on YouTube or wherever you want to listen our podcast, Apple, Google, and watch full episode on YouTube channel and subscribe to our newsletter. For the Interrobank, and Gracia Espinosa.